Hello, everyone, and welcome to GWEC's webinar around our Global Offshore Wind Report. We are having people just flow into the meeting room now, so we'll give it a minute before we actually kick off the event. Just while we're waiting for people to enter the room, I wanted to give you just an introduction. First of all, if you're here, I presume that you picked up a copy of your Global Offshore Wind Report. You've actually downloaded it, and it's not necessarily the printed version like I have here, but that you can download it and you can see all the facts and figures, and also the perspectives of the companies that are joining today. A lot of those companies are fed into that report, so we very much look forward and thank those for their contribution to that report as well. Just a little bit about GWEC. So GWEC, as the Global Wind Energy Council, we are the peak body for wind advocacy globally, as the name suggests. We do a lot of advocacy work, and part of that advocacy work is having strong data to support our claims. And part of that strong data is based on our colleague Fong Zhao's market intel work and the team of Fong's doing market intel and the contribution from industry. And so the way that we actually generate these reports is that Fong does a lot of research over the course of the years and industry engagement to get top down and bottom up figures, for example. So we are pretty happy with the quality of figures, and we know that a lot of the industry look to these figures over the course of the year to plan their business strategy. So very much welcoming. Yeah, as we can say, we were meant to be almost 1,000 people for the webinar today. I'll do the intros to the panel when it comes to that session. The way that we're going to structure the webinar today is that we'll have Rebecca Williams, who's the Deputy CEO of GWEC. She will do the opening remarks in a few seconds. Then we'll have Fong Zhao. He heads up our market intel team and also is part of the strategy team. He will be, he's a Chief Research Officer at GWEC. He'll do the presentation, and then we'll get into the panel where we have Brian O'Neill, who's the from Lincoln Electric. He's the Global Director of Offshore Power Generation. We have Paul Trevelyan, who is the Global Director of Renewables from Bureau Veritas. From Iberdrola, we have Rafael Vara, who's the New Business and New Tech Director. And then from Mingyang, we have Mark Liu, who's the Marketing Director for Mingyang. Rebecca, we'll hand the floor to you first to do the welcoming remarks. Oh, actually, sorry, before I do, if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat. We do have a packed program, so let's see, we do have some pre-arranged questions with the panelists to discuss, or discussion points for the panelists to discuss. But if you do have anything burning that relates to anything we're discussing, please feel free to put it in the chat. And if we can't get to them during the session, we'll make an effort to, when we publish the webinar, we'll make an effort to answer some of those questions in the links or in the show notes. Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Stuart, and welcome everyone to this year's webinar for the Global Offshore Wind Report 2025. And really, I would say that the story of this year's report is coming to you at a time of absolutely unprecedented change. And hopefully those of you who have read the report and seen at least the executive summary will be very familiar with these dynamics. But just to talk to you in a bit more detail about this wider context for the report and our key findings. So as I mentioned, we're really now moving into this period of unprecedented change, and the world is moving, I think it's fair to say, into what the IEA have coined the age of electricity. We're moving into this next industrial revolution. And this trend is absolutely unstoppable. I mean, we see it come through in all the facts and figures in our own report, and we also see it in many of the other noted commentators' report. This trend is happening, and we are kind of moving now into this next period. And as we move into this age of electricity, we're seeing the advent of so-called clean energy superpowers. So there are numerous countries which are moving towards rapid electrification of their full energy system, and they're on that trajectory. We are seeing this growth in electrification growing faster than any other sector in the energy sphere. And this is a really exciting trend, which I think couples with the wider digitalization of society that we're seeing. At the same time as we're seeing this mega trend for electrification, It will be news to no one, I'm sure, on this webinar that we continue to see a lot of geopolitical uncertainty during this period. So what we have seen over the past year and what's reflected in the report is that we're still seeing the effects of the long tail of the COVID pandemic, as well as the impacts of the war in Ukraine and the associated commodity price spikes and increases. And during that period, and that continues to the present day, we've also seen greater weaponization of energy supplies. This increased geopolitical uncertainty is coming through across a different range of parameters. And we're seeing that has become a very present feature of the global energy system as well. At the same time, a lot of the countries that we work with here at GWEC and a lot of the organizations that we work with are really thinking about the changing and shifting shape of global alliances. I think some of the norms of who our allies were in the past have changed, and we're seeing the forging of new relationships, maybe some unlikely new relationships in different places from different groups of countries. And against this backdrop, wind power is really being seen as a way to insulate yourselves against some of those geopolitical shocks that we were talking about in this time of geopolitical uncertainty. Because our finding in this report is that wind power is inherently resilient. I mean, once you've deployed the turbines, once they're spinning, there's no way to turn the tap on or off. So wind definitely enhances your energy security, and we're seeing that dynamic borne out across both the report and in the advocacy work that we do around the world. So against this wider backdrop, we now turn to the story of offshore wind during the past year. And what we have seen in the report is that we're now at 83 gigawatts of offshore wind installed globally. I mean, from its humble beginnings in Denmark some time ago, with Henrik Stiesdal. I don't know if he's on the call. Perhaps you're out there, Henrik. But from those humble beginnings, we're now at this figure of 83 gigawatts. And our report finds that that's enough now, enough power, enough electricity to power 73 million households worldwide. So a really strong impact already from the offshore wind sector. And in addition to that, we find that offshore wind is providing huge amounts of socioeconomic benefits, is really playing a role in revitalizing coastal communities. And as I mentioned in the first instance, in producing and providing homegrown clean power in order to boost economic regeneration in many countries around the world. We also found during the course of last year and continue to find that political support, perhaps putting aside some notable key countries over the last year, is actually stronger than ever before. So we found that amongst the countries that are pushing forward offshore wind, we found a very strong appetite to support the technology. And we're really pleased to continue to work with governments around the world on that agenda. But the other thing that is borne out by our report is that despite that positive momentum, the positive political momentum we see, there have been challenges in the offshore wind sector. And these are very well documented challenges, and we go into some of the reasons for that and explore those in full in the report. But to summarize here, the macroeconomic trend that we have seen around financing, and also the impact of that COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine on commodity and supply chain have been notable factors. However, we have found in this report that despite those challenges, the momentum continues, and the fundamentals of offshore wind are or continue to be unchanged. We've seen great progress in many countries around the world. So just to shout out and name a few, and we'll probably go into this in a little more detail throughout this webinar today. But looking at countries like South Korea, who have just launched their most recent offshore wind auction. We've seen the passage of the exclusive economic zone bill in Japan, which sets out the blueprint for floating offshore wind. We've seen the revision of the auction in the UK, the CFD auction there. We've also seen the Philippines lay out and announce their first ever auction and tender for offshore wind. If they do so, they'll become the first EMDE, so emerging and developing economy in APAC, to move towards full-scale commercial offshore wind. So some really exciting developments are happening around the world amongst a new swathe and a new set of markets. We can't really call these markets emerging anymore because they're actually now moving very fast down their offshore wind pathway. And we really have highlighted those in the report because they're not yet hitting our numbers. They do start to come into our forecast, as Feng will explain, in the later period. But these markets are where now it's really key that we get the right building blocks in place to enable that huge growth that we see coming, particularly from the APAC region in the next period. So that, I think, sets the scene nicely for the discussion. Stuart's nodding at me, which means that I'm just slightly running over time now. But I'm really excited to be able to talk to you all a bit more about this report, and really excited to have produced it this year. Thank you again to our sponsors and also to the team at GWEC who worked so hard to pull this report together. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for those opening remarks, and also glad that you mentioned the APAC region. We, as people would know, anyone out in the APAC, we are having a large APAC summit in Melbourne, Victoria, in September this year. So make sure that you get along to that if you're interested in markets in the APAC region. To walk us through some of the data now, we have Feng Zhao, who's our Chief Research Officer at GWEC. Feng, do you want to walk us through the data?
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Rebecca. Give us the high-level briefing about the key findings from this year's report and the position for the global offshore wind industry, but where we are today. So since everyone has already got this report, you download properly in PDF. So I will just quickly work through some key numbers because we got excellent panel today. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. You can find all the details from this report. Next slide. So in general, as the data shows, 2024, it's not the best year in terms of new installation, but it's not the worst, even though we got quite a challenge situation. So number indicate here last year we got 8 gigawatt grid connected across global, the fourth highest year in new installation. But I could tell you, as Stuart mentioned earlier, at GWEC, we collect the data not just from the demand side, where Energy Administration or National Association, which only counts the numbers which has been installed and grid connected. We also get the numbers from our members, OEMs. We can see last year, if we're looking at the mechanic installation without the turbine commissioning taken into account, we actually has almost 10 gigawatt. So this brings us almost in line with what we had a year ago. New installation numbers were split by region or country, where the next slide where you can see we got a chart, a 4 donut chart. On the top, the 2-1 just to show the new installation per country and cumulative installation per country. So the color code tells the story. China absolutely taking the lead, followed by Europe. If we're looking at the regional installation, it's the same picture due to the strong growth in China. So APAC absolutely taking the lead in both new installation and cumulative installations. Gradually, we see some turbine installed in market outside of the 2 key regions, China and Europe. But at this moment, looking at historic installation, they are not in a position where you see a big part of the portion installed across global. So last year report also had some exciting numbers. So next slide, you can see in terms of the total award capacity. So my team, we do the quarterly global onshore, offshore auction database. So looking at how many gigawatt has been awarded through the auction tenders across global, exciting. So even though last year it's not the best year in terms of new installation, but we got, where you can see on the chart, 56 gigawatt awarded across global. Imagine we only have 83 gigawatt installed by the end of last year. So that's quite a big, numbers out there, impressive. Also through the global project pipeline report, that's a database we offer through the GWEC Market Intelligence, which is available for members and the subscribers. You can see by May 2025, we have 48 gigawatt under construction at this moment across global. That's half of the capacity in operation by the end of last year. Looking at the auction pipeline or announced plan by countries across global, in total, we believe that around 100 gigawatt will be awarded in the next 2 years. In 2025, the numbers has been mentioned in the report. We're going to have 50 gigawatt pretty much ready to be announced as a winner throughout the year. So again, the position I think right now is quite good in terms of award capacity project under construction. But I think most interested for all of you join this webcast is to see, okay, we know where we are today, but I think most interesting is where we're heading for and what's the outlook. So next slide, we're going to have a look. The global offshore wind outlook in the next 10 years, different compared with our global wind report, where we offer 5 years onshore and offshore outlook, but summertime, normally in Q2, we offer 10 years outlook for global offshore wind market, which we split by fixed bottom, offshore wind, and also floating wind. The Excel spreadsheet is available for members and market intelligence subscribers to download from our website. So next slide, where you can see, although some of the numbers are presented in my previous slide to say, okay, fantastic, outlook, pipeline, very strong, but as you are aware, in the past 12 months or 18 months, there are a lot of headwinds for the industry. So compared with what we did a year ago, last summer, we have actually downgrade our global market outlook for offshore wind in the next 5 years. That's a short-term outlook by 24%. The reason is simple. I think I have the bullet and headline here. Microeconomic challenge, that's one thing, and failed auction, that's another. Supply chain constraint plus increasing policy instability, and also Rebecca mentioned earlier at the opening remarks about the geopolitical concern. So all the factors come into play. We end up with 25% downgrade in Europe. It's clear. You heard, the failure of auctions in both UK and most recently in Denmark. And also, even though big project gigawatt level got a CFD round 6 has been unfortunately cancelled due to the viability of the economics. Also, across Europe, you heard project delay in both Germany, also Belgium, and Netherlands. So which also change our outlook in the near term. Also in North America, I think that's quite simple. I think in our global new report, we have already give a good explanation about the position in terms of policy, market, and also the presidential orders. What does this mean in terms of offshore wind under construction, and also the impact for the new project in terms of methane, permitting, etc. In China, we slightly downgrade is mainly because the transition from the near shore to the deep water is relatively slow, but you may hear from the 1st of July this year, earlier last week, I think the Central Committee has come out with some statement. We believe that the transition will accelerate. Hopefully, we can review their outlook for China. For the outlook in APAC region, excluding China, at this moment, we also downgrade by 1/4. It's simple because with the auctions capacity announced in countries like Japan or South Korea, we got the clear COD deadline, so which actually help us to update our outlook for the near term. The downgrade in this region also driven by the reverse target, for example, PDP-8 in Vietnam. Instead of have 6 gigawatt installed by 2030, the target has been postponed to 2035. We also see the cancellation of project in Taiwan, the delay of the project seabed leasing, etc., in emerging market, including India. Even though we downgrade our short-term outlook, but fundamentally, as Rebecca mentioned, next slide you can see, we believe that the key drivers behind the growth never change. The mid-term outlook actually remain strong, where you can see start from 2030, we believe that the annual installation are going to pass the milestone of 30 gigawatt. By 2033, we can pass the milestone of 50 gigawatt in a single year. So in general, the total addition in the next 10 years, that's 350 gigawatt. Let's give out 35 gigawatt on average. But another message I want to highlight here, due to the challenge I mentioned in the previous slide, as you know, floating wind is like more than double the cost of bottom fixed offshore wind. In this circumstance, therefore, we don't believe that that's a conclusion from our report. We don't believe that the commercialization are going to be reached for floating wind until the end of this decade. So how we're going to deliver the next wave of growth for offshore wind, the next slide, where you can see this report, we have clearly identified, what needs to be done, and between the industry and the government, I think message is clear. We need to work closely and with the government, focus on the permitting, also redefine the auction design. We need to make the finance ready for the purpose to support the growth, and also strengthen the supply chain, where the report has mentioned clearly, I mean, the message is clear to deliver 30 gigawatt by 2030 and 50 by 2033. Without the collaboration across global for supply chain, we cannot achieve. Of course, supply chain is one thing. You got permitting, you got the pipeline, you got money, finance to support. But without grid transmission, I think that's another headache. So therefore, we call for the government working with the industry to build up the transmission line ahead of the time, so to support the growth. Because what's happening right now in Europe, for example, we already report the delay. That's one of the reasons why we downgrade our short-term outlook. Last, but at least that's regarding how to win the public support. I hope, through this call, where we're working with the industry and with the local community, we need to continue to amplify the benefit, what the offshore industry can bring to the society, to the industry. Hand in hand, we can continuously open the ceiling and make sure that we can pinpoint, address the challenge we're facing at this moment. So I'm going to stop here, Stuart. So looking forward to join the audience to listen to the comment, takeaway from our panelists. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for those that insight, Fong. I can see that I've been monitoring the chat as you've been speaking, and apart from tremendous amount of AI note takers that actually obviously have joined the call and taking very interesting notes around this, and we'll expect to see them populate your AI searches in the future. There has been a fair few questions that have come in that are relating to supply chain and particularly some shortages and how we actually look to build up that. So if we have time at the end of the webinar, I might actually bring you back in, because I know that that's something that of your area as well. So let's move on to the panel session of the presentation now, or of the webinar. And so, Brian, I'd like to start with you from Lincoln Electric. And first of all, I'm not sure how many people online know of Lincoln Electric. I mean, I know that you're a huge brand in the US, but perhaps a little bit lesser known in the offshore wind space, unless you're specifically working in the manufacturing or floating space. Can you give me a little bit about your background and a little bit of the company about Lincoln Electric?
Yeah, so Lincoln Electric is actually the oldest welding equipment and consumable manufacturer in the world, and actually the largest automation provider in the world. And what that essentially means is our expertise is around building the factories of today and the factories of the future as it relates to primary foundations. So whether that's fixed or floating, we're intimately involved in that process, and that's where our expertise lies, is in scaling that up with our customers and partners around the world.
And so we are very keen to work with Lincoln Electric, like the GWEC team. We've spoken about this, about working with Lincoln Electric to, I guess, enter into the new, or to really try to focus on the increasing the around floating offshore wind, and making that, sort of that we can actually start to build in some industrialization into the floating offshore wind space. From a Lincoln Electric perspective, what do you see as being that you guys can do right now that's going to be, playing a role to, I guess, work towards this, building out the offshore wind industry of the future?
Yeah, I think the good news is since 2021, excluding China, there's been around almost 13 significant expansions for fixed foundations around the world. And what's been nice about that we've seen is customers in our industry have embraced and continue to embrace higher levels of automation. So what that essentially means is the number of people required per foundation to build is actually gone down, at least in, outside of China. I can't speak to that specifically, but, with respect to the major European countries, as an example, they have some of the most sophisticated factories in the world and the most efficient factories in the world because they embrace technology at a very, very high level.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll come back to you a little bit after we've done the intros from the panel. We'll come back to you and get your thoughts around some of the blockages that we might see in the supply chain and how we can work through some of those. I'd like to move on to Iberdrola next, and we have Rafael Vara, who's the new business and new technological director at Iberdrola. Rafael, do you want to give a brief intro of I think Iberdrola is well known as a developer of, around the world, but maybe you can just set a few words about your role in Iberdrola and maybe how Iberdrola is viewing offshore wind, the acceleration of offshore wind at this time.
So, yeah, well, as you said, thank you for giving me the chance to be part of this panel, Stuart. Iberdrola has been in the offshore world for I think 15 years already, and we have been investing in offshore. We have 5 projects now in operation and 4 projects in execution. We have installed already more than 390, almost 400 turbines. So we are very, very familiar with this world, and we are in contact with and support most of the conclusions of the report. It's true that the offshore world is in a crossroads moment. It's been redefined, and I think that the need of offshore is still there. We trust on the conclusions of this redefinition of the offshore world.
Yeah, but I guess you guys, you've been in offshore for such a long time, and we do see that, markets go all through all sorts of cycles. There's been challenges, and we've come over those, etc. Are you seeing anything different this time in the market than what you've seen previously?
Well, what we're seeing is that until 3-4 years ago, the LCOE for offshore was coming down, and since, as Rebecca was explaining, since the COVID crisis, the high inflation, the Ukraine war, this LCOE curve is it's turned upwards. So now what we need to see is this curve coming down again. This is what we are expecting to see, and this is what we think the offshore development needs at this moment.
Yeah, interesting. And we'll come back to that bankability, around bankability of projects, and what you're seeing in that once we get into the actual panels. The next speaker I'd like to introduce is Mark Liu from Mingyang, who's the marketing director at Mingyang, and he's currently in Shanghai, I believe. Mark, nice to see you. Well, see the silhouette of you on at least on my screen. Welcome to the panel. Do you want to just give the audience a little bit about your background, and perhaps for those of you that are unaware of Mingyang's footprint, maybe you can explain a little bit about Mingyang and what you're doing in the offshore wind space.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you for the GWEC organizing everything. So my name is Mark Liu, and I'm from Mingyang Smart Energy. And I've been working in wind industry for around 20 years, and starting work in the offshore industry for over 6 years. So as you know, the Mingyang focus on the R&D and manufacturing of high-end new energy equipment. It covers the development and operation of clean energy, such as wind, solar, storage, and hydrogen. Mingyang products have served more than 70 countries and regions with more than 1,900 new energy projects globally, a total new energy delivery of nearly 130 gigawatts globally. So it means nearly 24,000 wind turbines. That is equivalent to the carbon reduction around 220 million tons. So Mingyang is working for is ranking first in the innovation in the global offshore wind power industry, and first in the world in 2023 and 2024 in terms of new installed capacity of offshore wind power. So that's a very brief introduction about me and Mingyang. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mark. And I guess we'd like to come back to you in a little bit when we start to look at the panel, and maybe also get some of our other panelists' perspective. I mean, Mingyang has managed to have substantial volume in the Chinese market and what the Chinese market looks like. So for you guys and the impacts of that, and Fong, I think, mentioned that there's been a slowdown in some of that development and what that means for you guys as a company. And then perhaps we can also look at how you see the development of other markets around the world where you're prevalent as well. Our final panelist today is from Bureau Veritas. We have Paul Trevelyan, and I hope, Paul, I've got your last name right. And you're the Global Director for Renewables, is that right?
That's correct, yeah. So Paul Trevelyan, pretty close, so not too bad. But yeah, I'm based out of Singapore with Bureau Veritas. I'm the Global Director for Renewables. Coming up on almost 4 years now, I've been with Bureau Veritas and been in the renewables industry for almost 17 years. So the majority of that history has actually been with the wind OEMs, specifically with Vestas, where I had roles including managing O&M projects throughout APAC, as well as focusing on project and contractual risks. Maybe I can give a quick intro on Bureau Veritas as well. So we're a very old company, almost 200 years old, and we've got about 87,000 employees worldwide, and we're in almost every country around the globe. So we fit into, I guess, the TIC space, so testing, inspection, certification. However, it really should be called TIC-A, as we kind of use that knowledge and experience we get from our global presence, and we complete advisory for projects as well. So in the wind space, we've been involved for almost 20 years, excuse me, and assisted with basically 1 in every 6 wind turbines installed globally, so both onshore and offshore. In some way or another, basically. So some pretty big coverage there. So, yeah, on the offshore wind side of things, other projects. So we can be involved pretty much all the way through the kind of full life cycle of a project, an offshore wind project. So whether that certification side, where we complete things like project certification, type and component certification, or in design and permitting stage, where we're involved in kind of highly accurate energy resource assessments, design reviews, and permitting assistance as well. We're also involved in the procurement stage, so assisting with supply chain services, so QA, QC, shop inspections, factory acceptance tests, and transport supervision, and then go all the way through to construction, where we're boots on the ground, where we complete things like project management, on-site QA, QC, and HSE, right all the way through to the commissioning side of the project. So, and we can wrap all of these services up into an owner's engineering contract as well. And so help our customers that way. So then after commissioning, we also do services that run through the OPEX stage as well. So looking at risk reduction or performance optimization. So our role in offshore wind is, it really focuses on whenever there's some quality or safety or the need for increased performance, then we can basically help our customers with technical capabilities.
Yeah, and if any of the listeners or the viewers are looking to hear a bit more about the specifics of what you can do, or one element of there is a nice case study in the report that I think relates to the offshore wind, the future of offshore wind project inspections as well. So make sure you check that out as if you're interested in more about what Bureau Veritas would do. Okay, now we've done the introductions and we've kind of looked at the high level what each of your companies do that relate to sort of driving this industry forward. Brian, I'd like to come back to you to start with, and to perhaps, if I'm looking at the chat, people are sort of focusing on the bottlenecks, and there's a lot of stuff around the supply chain. So I'll come to you first about where Lincoln sees the bottlenecks, from the supply chain, and particularly around manufacturing, and what specifically could be some of the possible ways to get rid of some of those bottlenecks.
So we are not experts in turbine manufacturing at all, just to be clear on that. So if people are asking questions about turbines, that is not our thing. What we can talk about is foundations and shipbuilding. So if we talk specifically about foundations, I think that as I mentioned before, the capacity has increased dramatically. And you saw what China did in some of Feng's numbers there, is they basically 4x their installed capacity, which means in order for them to do that, they had to have increased their actual, steel output per year. And so there's a tremendous amount of capacity in the world. At the same time, we mentioned there outside of there was 13 plus expansions around the world. So I think from a foundation perspective, we talk fixed foundations, specifically monopiles, there's a lot of capacity out there. And what those companies really need is they need certainty. They need certainty that these projects are going to continue to move forward. They need to be able to continue and invest. These investments that these companies are making are in hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and they need to be secure in those investments. So I think that what the industry needs from their perspective, speaking on their behalf, would be certainty that projects continue and that the pipeline continues to be full. And so that's what's probably most interesting right now to discuss.
Do you see those investment cycles being intact with, can the industry mobilize quickly? How long does it take an industry to mobilize around some of these things? What's the lead time? Do they need to be doing it now for projects in 25, in 27 or 28, or what? Yeah.
I think, most of them, you can go to all the public sources, but most of them are pretty well booked up for through 25, 26. I think 27 is going to be kind of an interesting inflection point to see where things go. But from somebody that first conceives the idea that, hey, I want to be in the foundation business, as an example, they're thinking 12, 24, maybe 36 months in advance, and it's going to take them a good 12 to 18 months to get that factory up and running. The good news is, as I mentioned, is that people have already made these commitments in 2021 and 2022. So there's a tremendous amount of capacity that's actually coming online, and what it needs to be fed, right? And so the steel mills in the world that have capacity want to continue to supply that. Regardless of what's happening in North America, there's a tremendous supply chain that's available to meet the fixed market today. Floating is a different topic. I think floating is a far-reaching topic that we can talk about.
Sure. And before I come to Mark from Mingyang to talk about the turbine manufacturers, you also mentioned the ship perspective. Are you seeing sort of like the challenges for the ship industry to keep up with turbine design?
Yeah, that's for sure. We hear this. We hear about the installed capacity being heavily affected by scheduling and the availability of bookings in that part of the market. And that's just due to the complexity of the installation vessels, but also depends on the projects standardizing. They have to standardize in terms of their sizes, and you hear, as an example, again, we're not experts in turbines, but I hear, one day it's 12, one day it's 15, then it's 20, that's 25. That changes the whole landscape for foundation manufacturing. And these factories need that certainty, and then the shipbuilders need that certainty too, so they know what size ships they should be building. right? And so the larger the turbine sizes go, that's going to have a significant weight on the ability of installation and the ability of shipbuilders to keep pace with that change, for sure.
Thanks. Then Mark, coming to you from a turbine manufacturer's perspective, are you seeing bottlenecks? Are you seeing challenges? And also, are you seeing, or where are you feeling the pressure for increased capacity, which is leading to these challenges that Brian just articulated?
Okay, so from the OEM supplier point of view, I think the bottleneck now is especially for like the capacity, production capacity now, because now China has a very complete supply chain, and also we have a very big capacity for that. So generally, that's especially for the offshore wind, I think globally that's all over can just maybe take advantage of the supply chain, especially no matter it's no OEM supplier or other like supplier like the marine, like the power cables, like the substations. For us, I think for most 20 years development that we can take advantage from the global supply chain. No matter it's from Europe, from the United States, or other countries, especially for like the major components like the bearings and whatever. So I think we need to take advantage for the global supply chain, including the China's supply chain, because that's I think it's as you know is for here that's installed around over many gigawatts for the offshore wind turbines for us, especially for the offshore over 2,000 wind turbines. That means we knew what's the experience and what's the bottleneck for that, so we can solve that. So I think yes, it's a global supply chain. You need to benefit for that.
Yeah, interesting. Also, it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about for your footprint, sort of like that global footprint outside of China, about where you see sort of like the development. It could be interesting to hear from where you see some of the options for Mingyang to be present just to service, for example, the European market.
Yes, for sure. That's the European market is how to say is our focus market, and also we have several offices in Denmark, in UK, in France, and in Hamburg. So also we have the plan to have the localization in Europe, matters in European countries or in UK. But now we are not officially announced that. But anyway, we have the plans to do that, to create more jobs for especially for the European countries, right? So I think also for other countries like in the Brazil, in South America, and also Asia Pacific, and also for the MENA area, like in the Central Asia. So all these markets are like our focus, and for sure, I think European market will be the most focused market for us.
Yeah, thanks for that. Didn't mean to put you on the spot for a scoop for the Offshore Wind Report podcast, but thank you for that, Raphael. From a developer's perspective, you're sort of like the people buying all of the equipment and running the projects. How do you see the supply chain? Are you seeing the same challenges throughout the supply chain?
Yeah, we are seeing similar challenges, but as you were saying in the report, things are slowing down a bit. In order to keep them back on track, we think that the intervention of the public authorities, the redefinition of the auctions, it's fundamental to make the projects profitable. We need the bid structure to be redefined. So as I was saying earlier, we are seeing the LCOE, the levelized cost of energy, going up. And in order to make the projects profitable, in order to make the full supply chain keep working, we need I believe, as Brian was saying, we need reliability, we need certainty, we need predictability, and for that, to keep the let's say the ball rolling, we need to ensure from the beginning a route to market, and this route to market needs to be at this moment in time subsidized. So, and this is what we see that most countries, at least in Europe, which is our main focus, are doing. We can see that Denmark is reconsidering CFDs. We can see this change of tendency in many countries, which makes us remain optimistic.
Yeah, interesting. I before this webinar today, I was doing a press interview with the ABC in Australia, and the journalist said to me that he had news that the government was actually trying to maybe looking at some sort of incentive for technology-specific subsidies or support around, for example, floating offshore wind, to make that viable or to bring that into the puzzle. Do you see, when we're talking about, fixed bottom versus floating, do you see a much bigger need for the governments to lean into the floating offshore wind?
Well, it depends drastically on the country. There are countries which their geographical conditions or their technical conditions are more suitable for bottom fixed than for floating, and the other way around. In those that they have the appropriate conditions for bottom fixed, always bottom fixed will come earlier than floating. I mean, this is like an obvious reality.
Yeah, sure. It's just more around the question of, do you in order for the floating offshore wind sector to gain the same traction? I mean, we've seen the first wind float Atlantic was what, 10 or 15 years ago, maybe longer. And I mean, now we're at the stage where we've moved through these pre-commercial phases, and it seems like the next phase needs to be opened up. So I'd be pretty keen to hear how Iberdrola would actually, what Iberdrola would like to see in that space to help open up that floating offshore wind market even further around, to make it, to be able to drive some efficiencies in that market, similar to what Brian was talking about before.
Well, what we are seeing, it's true that we are in the phase, or we were in that phase when all this crisis started 3-4 years ago. And what we are seeing is that the bottom fixed market, as you say in your report, it's been delayed. So we can see many auctions being awarded, but the number of FIDs taken is not that big. So we can see a delay in the bottom fixed, and this delay is more drastic in the floating industry, because floating is like it's by far it's quite a different technology from bottom fixed, and it's in the earlier stages. And being in the earlier stages means that need a stronger support from the authorities to make it real. It happens in every new technology. This is a new technology. What we can see in the market, it's only pre-commercial projects. In order to see more commercial projects, we need to see more investment.
Yeah, thank you. Paul, from your perspective, how's Bureau Veritas, how are your customers viewing the supply chain challenges and perhaps stuff around also around floating offshore wind as well?
Yeah, I think on the supply chain challenges, I think we've heard a little bit going on to the regional supply chains, or like looking to move into sort of regional trade frameworks that'll sort of help balance with efficiency, but also kind of resilience and maybe overall sustainability. There's also been a little bit of discussion we're hearing around the standardization of some components and the construction processes. So this would really help, I guess, anywhere where we can reduce the complexity in projects and sort of help reduce risk and help reduce the cost and this type of thing. What we're getting involved in pretty heavily, obviously, is the investment into innovation on how to drive down these costs. So yeah, there's a lot, I guess, that can be done in the new vessel designs and new lifting equipment, sort of new construction methods as well. But yeah, we're really looking into the efficiencies that we get with the kind of digital innovation that we're seeing as well. So yeah, a lot going on.
Yeah, Brian, you look like you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, maybe my 2 cents would say is that from an engineering design perspective, floating wind needs to come to grips with the fact that for 6,000 metric ton floating foundation, you know, the steel intensity is about 400 metric tons per gigawatt of turbine. If we assume 15 gigawatts, let's just say that that's the standard. That's, you know, 2.5 times more than what it is for traditional monopile foundation today. So which is about 165 to 180 metric tons per gigawatt. So you have a steel intensity level that is so high, but then on top of that is you don't have a way to achieve what we'll call serial manufacturing. So monopile factories, as an example, are pretty cool. They're kind of like an automotive car line. You bring steel in one end, and it's a straight line process, and out comes, you know, finished product. A floating wind foundation, serial manufacturing doesn't seem to be number one on anyone's list that we see, and that has to change. You know, for Iberdrola and all these companies out there, they have to be able to partner with people that can master that, and whoever masters serial manufacturing of floating wind is going to win. I mean, that's clear. It's a huge structure. I think it's much more larger than most people realize. You know, it's going to weigh 3 times as much as the monopiles of today, minimum. So it's a lot of steel, which is great. You know, if you're in the steel business and you're, you know, we want to see it fully commercialized. And so I think serial manufacturing is absolutely key. And that ties in, I think, some of the comments that Paul has mentioned as well. So,
yeah, thanks for that. Mark, I can see there was a question in the chat about the scalability of Mingyang's Taichung floating project for the 16 megawatt. Is that it says is there expected to be higher power in the future?
Yes, I think yes, that's absolutely, you know, because nowadays with single capacity is only 8.3 megawatts. But theoretically, that means that we can enlarge that, you know, into very big wind turbine model. Yes, if we see it now is 18 megawatts per each, that means the total capacity will be 36 megawatts. So theoretically, that can be realized because we have experienced a lot, especially for the floating. 5 years ago, we have installed the first floating wind turbines in China, and that time is you know, the price was very high, and the cost very high. But now, especially for our Ocean X, it seems the cost for the whole structure, including the wind turbine and also including the foundation, the floaters are dramatically down for the cost. So I really can see the, you know, the future of the floating wind turbines will be really benefit for the developers, for our industry, for the offshore, for the whole industry. So I think that will be the direction of offshore industry, wind industry. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Raphael, going back to you in terms of Iberdrola and how you've mentioned several times about, you know, the projects have been, you need to look at the LCOE and the driving the cost down and what that looks like. In terms of from an Iberdrola perspective, which markets are looking quite attractive to you at the moment? Where do you see sort of like an uptake in your presence moving forward?
Well, we are seeking opportunities all around. We are more established in Europe and in the US. And right now, what we are seeking is for, as Brian was saying, for certainty, for reliability. So those markets that can bring us that are mainly our preference. We can see, for example, that the UK has a very well-established process, very well-defined, very successful, very reliable. and this is the kind of markets we look for. It is time right now to be cautious, because what we can see in some markets is that the split of risk between the different actors is not the most appropriate one. So we seek those markets in which this risk is properly defined, in which we can have the certainty that the route to market is secured, in which we can see that the timing between the award and the start of construction is reduced enough, where the consent is warranted and is short. This is the kind of things we look into to focus our investments.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, actually, I can see that we are starting to come to our end of the time together. So I guess that we should allow each of you to have a formal wrap up, a 1 minute, I guess, hope for the future, and perhaps where you see, I guess your company's helping to overcome the biggest challenge. We might do it in reverse order. So Paul, we'll start with you first, and yeah, from your perspective, what's your biggest hope for the future, and where do you see Bureau Veritas as being able to lean in to help solve some of those challenges?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ones, obviously, but I think the streamlining of permitting process is probably one that will really help the regions. The strengthening of supply chains, I think, is also super critical. Yeah, Bureau Veritas, as I said, we're really looking into, well, anything to do with quality, we want to help that. So that'll really help reduce the risk, so any sort of technical risk, but then also process risk as well. And then we're looking really hard into the innovation space to try and increase the technology to make sure that we're able to come in with the best technology. The digital space is obviously very, very interesting. You talked about the AI people online, or the AI teams online. So yeah, we're looking really heavily into that space to try and reduce costs, reduce any quality issues for the offshore business moving forward.
Thanks very much. And Mark, from your perspective from Mingyang, where do you see Mingyang being able to contribute very tangibly to the growth and the future success of this offshore wind sector?
Okay, so because I think for our OEM supplier, the technological innovation is like our DNA, especially for developing more advanced technology, advanced wind turbines to produce more electricity to benefit the developers and also the industry. So from my point of view, that we will still stick to innovate more good products with more electricity production, and also I think for we can share, especially for the experiences like in the offshore, especially for the fixed bottom and also the floating ones. Anyway, we have experienced a lot, especially for the floating wind power industry. So especially also for the supply chain, just as Paul mentioned, that the cost, we need to work out to how can we lower the cost based on our good quality. So we have to keep the balance especially for the quality and together with the cost. Then we can see really the future for the offshore wind industry. So I think we need to work together to overcome the geopolitical issues to move forward, to make a better world. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, good parting messages, and that's something that GWEC actually believes in a lot, this idea of global collaboration and particularly working together as an industry to try to solve some of these challenges. Rafael, actually, I wanted to follow up with you. I should have asked you this before I moved into this part, but you mentioned that for Iberdrola, like the US is a big market, and you have a president that has been reluctant to engage with the wind industry, I guess, is probably a bit of an understatement. But I mean, if we're looking forward, and perhaps you can use this as part of your conclusion, if you're looking forward, is there still optimism in markets like the US, like after this political cycle is done and dusted? Are we still confident that there's going to be an industry left over there? And what would Iberdrola then see as your role of being able to contribute to a brighter future for the wind industry?
Well, what's going to happen in the US? If you're asking me that, it's of course it's impossible to say. What I think we need to work together as an industry, and it's been mentioned by my colleagues here. We need to work on cost reduction. We need to work on increased profitability of the offshore industry, which is what is now being put in question. So we need the supply chain to work on cost reduction. We need the developers, Iberdrola ourselves, to work on cost reduction, and we need the authorities to work on that. We need to focus on making this industry profitable enough so that we can keep growing and providing what I think it's a need for all of us, for every country, which is this green and secure energy. That also it's something that we need to be considering in this, let's say, changing world.
Yeah, well said. And I think that things like what Fong was outlining in his report, where it shows where we show to governments what industry can do, and then governments can sort of lean in to show and perhaps cover some of what industry needs, that security to invest. So I hopefully this is going to create these win-win scenarios of the future. Brian, from your perspective, from Lincoln's perspective, the hope for the future, and what are Lincoln specifically doing to actually help with that industrialization that you spoke about earlier?
Yeah, so I think overall very optimistic. I think that offshore wind is a key part of the solution, and I think we look at it from a global electrification strategy. So where offshore wind fits in a very good space where it fits, and because of that, the investments have been made, and so those investments, again, I keep saying the same word, but we need certainty. Certainty is everybody on the phone is going to benefit from that, and so when we have that, those supply chains are going to benefit from higher levels of automation. They're going to benefit from employing highly skilled workers. We haven't talked a lot about the workers, but this industry is the heart of many skilled trades, and so I think what we have seen is that where offshore wind has increased, manufacturing has increased, is that jobs have followed with that. And I think that that's a nice story to tell. And, you mentioned the US, but there's good efforts out there. There's people like the Oceanic Network in the US, which is one of your, I guess, colleague or peer organizations. They're doing great work to continue that message. And I think that we'll work through all these cycles, and we're going to continue to see, more steel capacity being installed. So that's good news for all of us, I think.
Thank you very much. And I know we've gone 5 minutes over the scheduled time, so thank you everyone for staying online and allowing us to conclude the webinar. Thank you, Brian, Raphael, Mark, and Paul, for your time today. The questions in the chat we've been endeavouring to answer those as they come in. Any ones that aren't, we will make sure that when we do publish the recording of this webinar, we will make sure that that we answer those questions or those unanswered questions. If you have any questions in relation to the report at all, please feel free to either reach out to myself or Fong or Rebecca or any of the GWEC team with those questions. And as I mentioned at the start, we also hope to be able to continue these conversations, particularly for the APAC region, which we see as being quite an interesting region. We hope that we can continue these conversations with you at our APAC seminar on the 16th to 18th of September in Melbourne. So we look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much.